lot of you are aware, it's been a very long journey getting here. But I think we're making some progress towards our collective vision for Nigeria, where our kids are protected completely from the harms of tobacco and from accessing tobacco products in this country. We must commend the Federal Ministry of Health. It's been a very painstaking journey, and in the last few years, they provided really good leadership for us CSOs to continue to support the process. So I think my task is really simple, just to say welcome and thank you once again for joining us, because I mean, the media and us have been partners in this entire journey. It's been very long, I must say, so far about 7 years, going to 8, to get Nigeria to fulfill its obligation to the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control by getting the National Tobacco Control Act passed, which is now law. Of course, it was passed in 2015, as most of you are aware, and now getting the regulations, National Tobacco Control regulations, passed, approved by the National Assembly, and now gazetted. So this is a huge deal, not just for Nigeria, but for the continent. So I must say that CSOs were very happy with the progress, but we also know that the battle is not over, because Nigeria needs to step up to the plate and start full implementation as soon as possible. Because these past few years we've been waiting for the regulations. Now the regulations are here. We don't really have an excuse but to kickstart full implementation of the National Tobacco Control Act.
National Tobacco Control Regulation 2019 is law. It's been gazetted. It's a long journey, just like Hilda said, but it's actually the beginning of another long journey. As we getting this regulation worked on, the tobacco industry has been trying to be very creative in their approaches at getting our children and our youth addicted. Last weekend, I traveled to some states in the southwest, and I found out that umbrellas of a particular brand called Target are now very common. We're trying to look at how we will draw the attention of the government to it. But what that basically tells us is that it is now the time for enforcing the law. This morning, there was a post by British American Tobacco for what they call graduate training program. And I read through. It was not a program for employment, but rather a program under which they want to, mentor Nigerian graduates on finance, leadership, and the rest of them. It's basically what they normally call corporate social responsibility. And so that tells us that while we're working, they are also looking at ways for them to continue to be relevant. So our charge this morning is very simple. We do commend the government for making this happen, but the fact remains that Nigerians are dying in their thousands as a result of smoking, and that this law cannot be any of those laws that will just pass and will then put under the shelf. For every day that the law is under the shelf, thousands of Nigeria are dying as a result of a preventable disease. We could see, the challenges of containing public epidemic by, the news of the recent past, weeks, where even the biggest countries around the world are battling so seriously to contain public health problem. Tobacco is already a major public health problem, killing several thousands of our people, and we will not fold our hands and allow this to turn into a pandemic while government can do something about it. So we want government to begin to activate the necessary enforcement agencies that will rein in people that continue to flout the National Tobacco Control Act and the National Tobacco Control Regulation. That essentially is our demand.
While we have thanked the Federal Ministry of Health and the Federal Ministry of Justice and every other ministries, departments, and agencies of government that has played a role to get us here as regards the gazettement of the regulation, I equally want to appreciate you, the media. You have been a very good ally over the years in helping to actually shape on the messages as regards tobacco control in Nigeria. And this reason is simple. It is because tobacco menace concerns all of us, concerns everybody. And that is why we have always seen this from that perspective, that the tobacco menace must be controlled for the safety and the well-being of I and you. So thank you very much. The regulations are here. It's a 33-section document that actually speaks about quite a number of things that gives impetus to how the National Tobacco Control Act of 2015 will be indeed implemented. And so if you would recall that about few provisions of the act were what we could move on with enforcement over, because we were waiting for the regulation. And those, if I could refresh the minds of few, some of those provisions are ban of sales of cigarettes in single sticks, ban of sale of tobacco to or by minors, and so on and so forth. But now we have the entire act that could be implemented, and that is why we are calling on the various and relevant ministry, departments, and agencies of government that has a role to play in that regulation to start to play the role right now. So I would like to talk about some of the provisions of the act as it relates to the regulation, and that we indeed expect them to take forward. And the first of it is what was talked about in section 2 of the National Tobacco Control Act, which speaks about the establishment of the National Tobacco Control Committee. The committee is indeed central to all the activities of tobacco control in Nigeria, and the tenure of the erstwhile committee has ended. So the time is right for the Federal Ministry of Health to constitute that committee again, such that, because we are at a crucial time in tobacco control, and so to take that forward, the National Tobacco Control Committee must be constituted immediately so that they can start to meet and start to do their functions as it has to do with tobacco control and indeed the regulation. And one of the functions of the committee is to administer and manage the fund, which is section 5B, section 5 of the Act that spoke about the tobacco control fund. And so that is also very much important, because tobacco control over the years has lingered so long because of the issue of funding. And so funding is critical to tobacco control in Nigeria, and the Act as well as the regulation has made it easy to get the issue of funding at least worked upon. We know the government should do better, even beyond whatsoever has been done, but now, right now, we need to establish that tobacco control fund, because it is very, very critical to the work of tobacco control in Nigeria. And there are other provisions of the regulation. Objectives is section 1 and 2. We have graphic health warnings, sections 3 to 7. We have smoke free from section 8 to 14. We have the prohibition of tobacco advertising, promotion and sponsorship in sections 15 to 19, and the issue of enforcement was captured in section 20 of the regulation, and licensing on sections 21 to 25 of the regulation. And indeed, we have the tobacco control fund in section 26 of the regulation. So all these are actually stipulated in the regulation to take us forward on how the National Tobacco Control Act will be implemented. And the time to start implementation is now. The time to start enforcement of the parts that needs enforcement is indeed now. And so we must take that forward for the safety of the children, for the safety of the youth, for the safety of the women, for the safety of men, for the safety of everyone. Because indeed, the tobacco industry targets and in fact, the teeming youth population of Nigeria, who is at risk of the various whims and caprices of the tobacco industry. So that's a little bit that I would like to draw to their attention. One is the National Tobacco Control Committee that needs to be reconstituted, and the tobacco control funding that needed to be worked upon, and every other single provisions in that regulation.
You and I know that there is only very little that can be achieved without money. And it is important for the Tobacco Control Unit and the National Tobacco Control Committee to have a pool of funds where they can tap into to run their activities, to do the sensitization that is required, to do the monitoring and evaluation that they need to do, to check for compliance and all those things that are necessary, to implement the Act and the regulations. The Act already provides for some components of the fund, how it will be managed, who is in charge of what to be used for. The regulation builds further on that. Now let's talk about the licensing. Before now, there has been no regime of licensing of tobacco products and tobacco manufacturers, importers, and what have you in the country. What we've had so far are just a few pockets of registration, a few pockets of testing here and there that they have. But now the regulation, as empowered by the Act, makes the Ministry of Health responsible for issuance of license. And the regulation spells out the conditions for getting this license and the process for obtaining license. The regulation is very clear on what to do, and the industry are already aware of what they need to do to get the license. So we expect that the Ministry of Health will begin to issue license to the stakeholders, to those people that are involved in this. And the licenses cover manufacturers, importers, and distributors. For now, there is no provision for licensing for retailers, because that is not covered in the Act as of today. Then I also want to dig further and talk about some of the major wins that the regulation gives us in our work on tobacco control. Oftentimes we hear people talk about unavailability of signs and notices as prescribed by the Act. Now the regulation prescribes that there will be a technical repository in the TCU where you can apply to the Tobacco Control Unit for samples of the signs. The no smoking signs, the health warnings and so on. The Ministry of Health now has a technical repository where you can get these samples and you can reproduce for your own use. The regulation also goes further to give details on smoke-free places. It provides for the health warnings that should be on parks, that should be on entertainment or media works that depicts tobacco use and so on. So far, from our analysis of the regulation, it's a major step in the right direction, providing a lot of clarity on what the law provides for. It provides a lot of clarity on what we should do and the critical steps that should be taken to ensure that the Act is fully implemented. We've come a very long way since we signed up to the FCTC in 2005. This is 2020. I believe that a child that was born 5 years ago, 15 years ago, should, if not be in the university now, should be concluding the secondary school. It is time for us to go into full implementation as a country. We have done enough of preparing for implementation. We expect that the government will do what is necessary, take the right steps now to go into full implementation in fulfillment of our obligations to the international community. Thank you very much.